Hello everyone, it is I, Mark S.W. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to the first Thomas the Tank Engine anniversary videos that I'm doing. For those of you who don't know, today, the 9th of October 2024, this marks the 40th anniversary of the Thomas the Tank Engine TV series, and then next year, on the 12th of May 2025, it will be the 80th anniversary of the series of books that were written by the Reverend W. Awdry. So as you can see, Thomas has two anniversaries celebrating, and I wanted to do something special because I've always loved Thomas and his friends. Now, I've seen on YouTube people have written their own stories, or they've taken some episodes and rewritten them to make them maybe better, especially some of the newer episodes like the ones from series 8 onwards. So I thought I'd do something similar. But in order to sort of combine the two anniversaries together, what I've done is I've chosen 20 episodes that are not from the books, and I've rewritten them in a way that they could have been made for the books. So we have 5 books in total, because they all have 4 episodes, or stories, if you like. So to kick things off, I'm going to start with the first book called Helpful Engines. I've chosen 4 stories which I think are very appropriate for the title. Before we begin, do please subscribe to my channel if you're new and hit the notification bell. And if you're one of those YouTubers who makes Thomas stories and you'd like to adapt these stories into something more visual, then you're more than welcome to. But please provide your own narration. Enjoy. Thomas's Day Off. It was a beautiful morning on the island of Sodor. Thomas the Tank Engine was puffing happily along the line. At the junction, he met Henry. "Good morning, Thomas," he said. "You're looking cheerful today." "I am," puffed Thomas. "The Fat Controller has given me the day off today. I'm going to Knapford to have a washdown, and then I'll visit Norranby Beach." "Well, if you get a chance," said Henry, "say hello to Dennis. He's a new diesel who's come to help with small goods work." At the washdown, Thomas sang a little song. Shiny and bright, just what I need to start my day right." As the workmen were finishing off, he saw a diesel he had never seen before. The diesel was struggling to shunt trucks full of gravel. "Hello," Thomas whistled. "You must be Dennis. What's the matter?" "These trucks are too troublesome," moaned Dennis. "I can't shunt them into position." "It's my day off, but I'll help you once I've had my washdown," said Thomas kindly. Soon Thomas was hard at work shunting the trucks into a long line. I'm sorry to say that although Dennis is not rude like most diesels, he is, however, a very lazy engine. The reason he couldn't shunt the trucks was because he wasn't putting enough effort into it. While he watched Thomas at work, he came up with an idea. Maybe he could get Thomas to do the work for him. "All done," panted Thomas. "Thank you, Thomas," oiled Dennis. "I have to take the trucks to the work station for the narrow gauge railway, but I don't know where that is." "Don't worry, Dennis," said Thomas. "I'll show you the way." Although Thomas agreed to show Dennis the way, Dennis still had to push the trucks, which was not what he had in mind. When they got to the junction, he had another idea. He started to pretend that he was struggling to push the trucks. His wheels slipped and spun, and soon a thick black cloud exhausted out of his vents. "I'm overheating," he said weakly. "You'll have to take the trucks for me." Thomas wanted to help, even though it was his day off, but he knew that he couldn't pull all the trucks on his own. "I'll get help at the next station, then I'll come back as soon as I can." So Thomas hurried away. Dennis was annoyed that his plan had backfired again, so he decided to leave his trucks and head back to Knapford. Another engine will have to take them, he thought to himself. And with that, Dennis raced away. He didn't care about the trucks of gravel. He didn't care about Thomas. All he cared about was getting as far away from his work. Soon Dennis was going faster and faster. He knew that this plan would work, but he had reckoned without the signalman at the previous junction. When he saw Dennis approaching, he thought he was in trouble and was a runaway. He quickly set the points to the runaway siding. By the time Dennis realized what was going on, he felt his back smash against the buffers and he ended up in a muddy pond. "Help!" he cried. "Help!" But there was no one around to hear him. Meanwhile, Thomas arrived at the workstation. The Fat Controller was there. "Thomas, have you seen Dennis?" he said. "The workmen are waiting for him and his trucks. They can't start work on the transfer yards until they get the gravel." "Yes, sir, I have seen him," said Thomas, and he explained what had happened. "I'll have to go back and bring some of the trucks." When Thomas returned to the junction, he was surprised to find that Dennis was missing. Suddenly, he heard a faint toot toot in the distance. "That sounds like Dennis's horn," thought Thomas. As he puffed further down the line, he was even more surprised to find Dennis in the pond. "I thought you broke down at the junction," he said. "What happened?" Dennis had a very shameful face. "I tricked you," he said quietly. "There was nothing wrong with me. I just didn't want to push those heavy trucks. I'm a really lazy engine." Thomas was so cross he was tempted to leave Dennis, but he realized that he was now in serious trouble, so he decided to help one last time. "I'll pull you back onto the rails, then I'll be your back engine, and we'll deliver the gravel together." Soon Dennis was back on the rails, coupled to the trucks, and he and Thomas arrived at the workstation. "Dennis," said the Fat Controller crossly, "you are a very naughty engine. You have caused confusion and delay." "I'm sorry, sir," said Dennis. "Thomas has shown me that being a useful engine is much better than being a lazy one." The Fat Controller was delighted. "Well done, Thomas. Now you can continue with your day off." "Thank you, sir," said Thomas proudly. "And thank you, Thomas," said Dennis. "From now on, I will try to be a useful engine." Happily ever after. Mrs. Kindly is a great friend of the railway. Everyone was excited to hear that her daughter, Mary, was going to get married. The wedding was to take place at the church near Wellsworth Station on Edward's branch line. "I've never been to a wedding," Percy said to Terence one day. "I wish I could go." "I don't think engines go to weddings," chuckled Terence. "As far as I know, they only pull wedding trains." On the day of the wedding, Percy's driver and fireman arrived at the sheds early. "Wake up, Percy," they said. "Mrs. Kindly is coming to see you. She needs your help." "Oh dear," thought Percy. "I hope there isn't a problem with the wedding." When Mrs. Kindly arrived, she looked concerned. "I've forgotten my daughter's good luck package," she said. "What's a good luck package?" "It's a wedding tradition. It must contain something old, something new, something borrowed, and something blue. Please, can you help me find these things?" Percy wasn't sure how, but he didn't want to see the wedding ruined. "I'll try my best," he promised. Percy's first train of the day was to take some trucks to the harbour. At the junction he met Edward. "I've got to find a good luck package," he said. "Do you know what it is? "Oh, yes," said Edward. "It's something old, something new, something borrowed and something blue," Percy interrupted. "But where do I find them?" Edward smiled. "They're probably staring at your smoke box. Now, you'll have to excuse me. I must fetch my special coaches. I'm taking guests to the wedding." When Percy arrived at the harbour, he looked all around. Suddenly he saw a truck. It was loaded with a brand new set of buffers. "Look, look, something new!" he cried. "You're right, Percy," said his driver. "Those buffers are just the ticket. I'll speak to the foreman." He returned shortly. "Foreman says that we can borrow the buffers and the flat truck they're on. So that's two things we've found. Something borrowed and something new. But what about the other things?" asked Percy. "I'm sure we'll find them," said his driver. "Now we must be on our way." Percy took the buffers and his next train back to the top station. When he arrived, he spent the rest of the morning shunting trucks in the yard, when he heard a voice. "Hello, Percy." There was Victoria, the old coach. She used to be painted blue, but now she's painted orange. "You're it!" squeaked Percy. "I'm what it?" asked Victoria. "Something old for the wedding," and Percy explained. "Now, we just have to find something blue, but what and where?" "I think I know," said his driver. That afternoon, Percy was on his way with his unusual train. When they arrived at Edward's station, he was surprised. "What do you think of this, Percy?" laughed his driver. Thomas was on a siding, covered in white ribbons. "Well, bust my boiler! What are you doing here, Thomas?" "I'm the something blue," said Thomas. "Now then, Percy," said his driver, "Mrs. Kindly has chosen you to be her special guest at the wedding." Percy smiled from buffer to buffer. The two engines arrived at the vicarage orchard, where the wedding party was taking place. Edward had already brought the wedding guests, and the Fat Controller made a special announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present Mary's good luck package, all found by Percy and his crew." Everyone cheered and the engines whistled. Later, Mary spoke to the engines. "Thank you, Thomas and Edward. And thank you, Percy. It's the best good luck package any bride could ask for." And she kissed Percy on the cheek. Thomas and Edward laughed as Percy blushed bright red. Trevor's garden party. When Edward isn't busy, he likes to visit his friend Trevor the traction engine at the vicarage orchard. One day, Trevor had some important news. The vicar says that not all children are able to have trips to the seaside, so he's having a garden party to raise money for a seaside trip, he explained. "I'm going to be the star attraction, giving rides to all the visitors." "I'd like to help," said Edward, "but without my rails I don't think I'd be much use at a garden party." As Edward puffed back to work, he was starting to feel a little left out. "I wish there was something I could do for the party. I'd like to be helpful like Trevor." Edward's driver laughed. "You're helpful in your own way," he said kindly, "and that's on the railway." Next day, it was Trevor's turn to look upset. He had bad news. The vicar has been so busy organising the party, he's forgotten to put up the posters. Now no one will know about the garden party. But Edward had an idea. "Don't worry," he said, "everything's going to be all right." Then he explained to his driver. "The vicar can paste his posters on my cab, tender and coaches, so wherever I go, they'll go too." "Well done, Edward," said his driver. "I'm sure the Fat Controller will agree." As indeed he did. Soon Edward was steaming happily through the stations, collecting his passengers. "Look," they said, "the vicar is having a garden party. We must go to that." Later that day, Trevor was resting in the orchard field when Bertie the bus rode up. "Hello, Trevor. Why are you dozing there like an old stick in the mud?" "I'm not dozing, I'm resting," protested Trevor, and he told Bertie about the garden party. "I'll be there too," said Bertie, "but I'm not sure people would want to ride on a traction engine after travelling on a smart red bus like me." A few days later, the party day arrived. It had rained heavily during the night, and the orchard ground was muddy and soggy. "Rain and mud won't spoil my day," said Trevor. "No, indeed," said the vicar. "Stay on the road and you won't get bogged down." Trevor was soon chuffing up and down the quiet country lane, pulling a cart full of happy children. On his third run, he heard Bertie just as he turned the corner. "Hello, old-timer. I've brought more people to the party. Edward's idea is really working." Trevor gave Bertie a cheerful toot as he puffed towards the roundabout, where he would turn back towards the orchard. As he approached the entrance, there was trouble. "Help! I'm stuck!" shouted Bertie. His wheels had sunk deep into the orchard mud. Luckily, Terence was there. "I'm the one who has to plough fields," he laughed. "We'd better get you out." Using strong rope, Terence and Trevor pulled Bertie out of the mud. "This will teach Bertie a thing or two," Trevor chuckled to himself. At last, Bertie was on the road again. "Thank you, Terence, and thank you, Trevor. You're not a stick in the mud after all." "No," chuckled Trevor, "but you were, just for a little while." That evening, the vicar arrived at the station to see Edward and his crew. "Thanks to your brilliant idea about the posters, hundreds of people turned up at the garden party. We've raised lots of money for the children." Edward was very pleased, and Trevor fell happily to sleep, thinking of all the children who would now get to the seaside at last. Emily and the Coaches. Oliver, the Great Western Engine, was excited. A new engine from Scotland had arrived, and he had been chosen to show her around. The engine was beautiful, with shiny emerald paint and a gleaming brass dome. "Hello," said Oliver. "Hello to you," said the engine. "Oliver," said the Fat Controller, "this is Emily. She's our new mixed traffic engine. Please show her around." The two engines got on well, and together they spent most of the day shunting in the yard. Emily did struggle a bit with the trucks, but she handled the coaches perfectly. "Such a polite and kind engine," they said to each other. This gave Oliver an idea. "Henry will be away pulling the flying kipper. Maybe you could take his early morning passenger train." "That would be great," said Emily. "Thank you very much." Their drivers spoke to the inspector, who agreed. But next morning, when Emily went to collect the coaches, the only ones she could find were Thomas's coaches, Annie and Clarabelle. "These aren't your sort of coaches," said her driver, "but I suppose they'll do." Annie and Clarabelle felt insulted. Emily was coupled up to them, and she pulled them along the line smoothly and gently. But the coaches weren't satisfied. "How dare he say we'll do? How dare he say we'll do?" they grumbled. They were even more upset when they left the junction station and saw Thomas passing by with the early morning goods. "Beep, beep, hello," whistled Emily. But Thomas didn't whistle back. "Those are my coaches," he muttered. "Give them back." But Emily didn't hear him. As Emily continued with her journey, she whistled hello to the other passing engines. but none of them whistled back or said hello. It was the same for the return journey. She was very upset. "I don't understand," she said to herself. "What have I done wrong?" When Emily finished her journey, she pushed the coaches onto a siding next to Duck. "What are you doing with Thomas's coaches?" he asked. "So that's why everyone was cross," exclaimed Emily, and she told Duck what happened on her journey. "I must go and apologize to him." But before Emily could go, the station master ran out. "Oliver hasn't passed the next signal box," he said to Emily's driver. "Please go and see what's wrong." Emily soon found Oliver. He was coupled to a long line of trucks full of sand, and he had stopped right in the middle of the points. "Are you all right, Oliver?" she asked. "Not really," said Oliver. "I'm out of water." Emily could see that there was a puddle of water underneath Oliver. His water tank had been damaged and was leaking. Suddenly, they heard a distant toot toot. It was Pip and Emma, the high-speed diesels, pulling the express. Emma was in front. She could see Oliver and knew she could never stop in time. "Oh!" groaned Oliver. Without hesitating, Emily charged forward, buffered up to Oliver, and pushed as hard as she could. It wasn't easy with the heavy loads of sand, but Emily pushed and puffed with all her strength until she finally pushed Oliver onto the other line. Oliver's fireman quickly changed the points just as Pip and Emma thundered by. Once the line was cleared, Emily pulled Oliver back to the sheds so he could be mended. Later that evening, the Fat Controller arrived to praise Emily. "Well done. You were a very brave engine." "The bravest," added Oliver. "As a reward," the Fat Controller continued, "you can pull passenger trains for the next 2 weeks." "Thank you, sir," said Emily. Then she spoke to Thomas. "I'm sorry I took Annie and Clarabelle." "And I'm sorry I was cross," said Thomas. "Friends?" "Friends," said Emily happily. Thanks for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed the stories. If you did, then do give this video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon, and you can follow me on my social sites. I'll see you next time. Over and out.